I think I might be in love with you. You're so beautiful.
So, my two sons are in love with you. Are you going to break both their hearts?
Zola Pemberton arrived in Seoul on a Tuesday with two large suitcases, a carry-on stuffed with textbooks she had packed because she intended to study and not because she was anxious, and the specific energy of a 20-year-old who had been told by her parents with 48 hours notice that her junior year was happening in Korea and not in Atlanta, and that she should be grateful because Aunt Mira, not her actual aunt, her mother's college roommate, had a beautiful apartment in Mapo and two sons in college, and everything would be fine. Everything would be fine. Zola had stood in the Atlanta kitchen while her parents explained about the lease opportunity and the sabbatical, and the fact that Aunt Mira had been delighted when they called, genuinely delighted, and she had said very little because she was a junior in college with a 3.8 GPA and the emotional intelligence to recognize that some decisions had already been made before she was consulted. She had packed her textbooks, she had booked her flight, she had texted her best friend Kezia. My parents leased the house and sent me to Korea for a year. Kezia had replied, like, Korea, Korea? Seoul, Korea, yes. Are you okay? I have no idea, she had typed back, honestly. She still had no idea. She was in a taxi from Incheon watching Seoul appear around her in its dense, glittering enormity, and she had no idea, and her suitcases were in the trunk, and her textbooks were in her lap, because she had taken one out in the airport for comfort and had not put it back. The apartment building in Mapo was a 12-story residential complex with a small convenience store on the ground floor and a laundry room on the second, and the specific domestic smell of many people living in close proximity that she recognized from her college dormitory and found, unexpectedly, comforting. Aunt Mira's apartment was on the 8th floor. Mira Kim opened the door, and Zola's mother had not been wrong. She was warm, genuinely warm, with the particular warmth of someone who had decided to make a person feel welcome and was not performing the decision. She was Korean, mid-40s, with close-cropped natural hair and laugh lines, and the energy of a woman who had been doing everything by herself for long enough that doing everything was simply how she moved. Zola, she held both Zola's hands. Your mother sent me 3 pictures of you every year until you were 18. I feel like I know you. She told me you'd say that, Zola said. She said to tell you she still has the photo of you two at the 1999 homecoming. Mira laughed, a full, real laugh. Come in. You have your own room. The boys are, she glanced down the hallway, somewhere. You'll meet them. The apartment was large and warm and organized in the specific way of someone who had raised 2 children in it, functional, personal, full of the evidence of a life actually lived. Plants on the windowsill, a corkboard with notes and photographs in the kitchen, books organized by subject rather than aesthetics. Mira showed her the room, her own room, good-sized, a window with a view of the Mapo street below, a desk, a bookshelf already partially stocked with novels in both Korean and English. Mira said, I put some English books in there. I wasn't sure what you'd like. If they're not right, I'll swap them. Zola looked at the shelf. She looked at the room. She thought about her house in Atlanta that her parents had leased to strangers and felt the specific homesickness of someone who does not yet have anything to be homesick for in their current location, but knows it is coming. This is perfect, she said. Thank you. She meant it. She met Sung-jin first. He knocked on her door 20 minutes after she arrived, which she would learn was exactly his way. Considerate, timely, not wanting her to feel alone in a new space longer than necessary. He was Korean, 21, and he looked like someone who had been assembled with care from good materials, not conventionally striking in the way of someone trying to be, the opposite of that actually, the kind of face that became more interesting the more you looked at it. Clear skin, warm beige complexion, dark eyes behind wire-framed glasses that were scholarly and slightly old-fashioned and suited him completely. neat short black hair carded on the side. He was wearing a pale blue button-down shirt tucked into dark jeans, which was either a fashion choice or the outfit of someone who had dressed for an occasion, and she would learn it was neither. It was simply how he dressed, because he had considered the options, and this was the correct one. "Hi," he said. "I'm Sung-jin. Min-jun and I are twins. I'm the one who—" He stopped. He seemed to recalibrate. "I brought you something." He held out a small paper bag. Inside was a green tea Kit Kat and a bottle of banana milk. "My mother said you'd just gotten off a long flight. These help. Scientifically, the sugar and the—" He stopped again. "You probably don't need the explanation." Zola looked at the Kit Kat and the banana milk and the earnest 21-year-old in the doorway. "I absolutely need the explanation," she said. "Come in." He came in, he explained the science of post-flight recovery nutrition, which was charming in the specific way of someone who is genuinely interested in what they are talking about and has temporarily forgotten to be nervous. He had a degree in biomedical engineering he was 3 semesters into, and minor in classical piano that he mentioned almost as an apology, as though the piano were something that required explanation. He asked her about her program. She was studying environmental policy at a university in Atlanta, deferred to online credits for the year, with the focused interest of someone who actually wanted to know. He did not once make her feel like a guest in the wrong place. When he left, she sat on the edge of the bed with the banana milk and thought that Sung-jin Kim was the kindest person she had met in some time, and also that she had not yet met the other twin. She went to find the other twin an hour later, following the sound of music coming from behind a door at the end of the hallway. She knocked. The music stopped. A pause. The door opened. He was not what she had been prepared for. She had been prepared for another version of Sung-jin, some variation on the same theme. She had not been prepared for Kim Min-jun. He was the same height as his brother, the same warm beige complexion and Korean bone structure, the same dark eyes, and that was approximately where the similarities ended. His hair was long, past his shoulders, and it was red, not auburn, not a subtle tint, red, a deep, vivid red that was clearly intentional and was clearly the choice of someone who made choices like this with full commitment and no particular interest in whether other people found them appropriate. He was wearing a black sleeveless shirt that showed the tattoos on both arms, not small or subtle, actual work, intricate and considered, botanical illustrations on one forearm and something that looked like constellations climbing the other, disappearing under his sleeve. He was leaning against the doorframe with the loose physical ease of someone who has never once been uncertain about how to occupy space. And he was looking at her with dark eyes that were exactly like his brother's and somehow not like them at all, more direct, less careful, the kind of looking that didn't bother managing itself. "You must be the American," he said. His English was slightly more accented than Sung-jin's, which would make no sense to her until she understood that Sung-jin had practiced and Min-jun had not particularly cared to. "Zola," she said. "I live here now, apparently." "Apparently," he said. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, the thing that lived before a smile, in the space where amusement had not yet decided to commit. "Min-jun." He did not extend a hand or produce a welcome gift. He looked at her with the full, unbothered attention and said, "You knocked on my door." "The music," she said. "What about it?" "I recognized it. The song. I didn't expect to." He looked at her. "What do you know about that song?" "My dad played it every Sunday, old Korean ballads. He went through a phase when I was 12. That one stuck." A pause. He looked at her with a quality of attention that had shifted, still direct, but different, the specific shift of someone who has just had their existing assessment revised by a piece of information they did not expect. "Your dad listens to Korean ballads?" "My dad listens to everything. He once spent 3 weeks exclusively listening to Mongolian throat singing. My mother almost left him." He looked at her for a moment, then he laughed, short and real and unannounced, the laugh of someone who has been caught off guard by something that has nothing to do with performance. He pushed off the doorframe. "Come in," he said. "I'll play it again." She went in. His room was the opposite of his brother's in every measurable way. Sung-jin's room was organized and quiet, with a color-coded study schedule on the wall and a piano keyboard on his desk that he played with headphones. Min-jun's room was organized only in the sense that he knew where everything was, which meant no one else could navigate it. Guitar in the corner, another guitar on the bed, a record player on the floor with a stack of vinyl beside it, clothes on the chair that were either clean or very recently worn, the walls covered in posters and photographs, and what appeared to be the beginnings of a mural he was painting directly onto the wall, which explained the small containers of acrylic paint on the windowsill. He sat on the floor beside the record player and put the song on, and she sat on the floor too without being asked, and listened. She had not expected to spend her first hour in Seoul sitting on a stranger's floor listening to a Korean ballad. She had not expected the stranger to have red hair and constellation tattoos and a laugh that came out like it had been startled. She had not expected any of this day. She leaned her head back against the side of his bed and looked at the ceiling and let the song be what it was. And Min-jun sat beside her and said nothing. And that was, she would think later, the first thing that surprised her about him, that he was completely comfortable with silence. She had not expected that from the red hair and the tattoos. She had expected performance. What she got was a 21-year-old sitting on his floor next to a record player with his long red hair falling over one shoulder and his tattooed arms resting on his knees, not performing anything at all. "Your brother gave me banana milk," she said. "He gives everyone banana milk," Min-jun said. "It's his version of a handshake." "It worked," she said. "He knows," Min-jun said. "He's very strategic about kindness. It's actually slightly terrifying." She turned her head to look at him. "That's your brother?" he said. "I'm aware. He's my favorite person in the world, and I find him slightly terrifying. Those are not contradictions." He glanced at her. "Do you have siblings?" "No, just me. My parents' full focus. It's a lot." Twins is also a lot. Being someone's mirror your whole life. Having someone who knows every version of you before you've decided which one you are. He looked at the record player. "Jin is better at it than I am. He's better at most things." "That can't be true," she said. "He has a 4.0, Min-jun said. "He speaks 4 languages. He's been playing piano since he was 5. He said this without bitterness, she noted, simply as facts about a person he knew well and had no interest in competing with. "I play guitar, and I have tattoos, and I'm failing organic chemistry." "Why are you taking organic chemistry?" she said. He looked at her. "My mother wanted me to," he said. "She had ideas about pharmacy school." He paused. "I have different ideas." "What are your ideas?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. He reached past her and turned the record over, and the B-side of the ballad came on, and he said, "Music, composition specifically, writing songs that other people feel something from." He said this the way people say things they don't usually say out loud, carefully, braced for the response. "Then you should do that," she said. He looked at her. "You've been here 3 hours. I know. I have opinions quickly. It's a flaw." He didn't say it was a flaw. The song played. Outside, the Mapo street did its evening thing. Somewhere down the hallway, the smell of Mira's cooking arrived, warm and domestic, and Zola sat on Min-jun's floor in his organized chaos of guitars and records and half-finished wall murals, and felt, unexpectedly and without permission, like she might be in exactly the right place. The first month was an education in 2 different kinds of attention. With Sung-jin, it happened over the kitchen table. He was a morning person, up at 6, coffee made, studying done by 8, which she found slightly unhinged and also impressive. She was a 7:30 person at best, and she would come into the kitchen to find him already there with his organized notes and his glasses and his calm, competent presence, and he would always, without fail, without being asked, have made enough coffee for her. "You don't have to do that," she said, the 3rd morning. "I'm making it anyway," he said. "The marginal effort is 0. "That's a very scientific way of saying you're being kind," she said. "They're the same thing," he said. She disagreed with this philosophically and told him so, and they argued about it for 40 minutes over coffee, and she was late to her first online lecture of the semester and could not entirely bring herself to regret it. He studied with her, not in the intrusive way, not the way of someone who wanted proximity, but in the way of someone who had always studied alongside his brother and understood that shared silence was its own form of company. He would sit at the other end of the kitchen table with his biomedical engineering work, and she would have her environmental policy reading, and they would not speak for hours. And at the end of it, she would feel more settled than she had studying alone, which was a thing she did not immediately admit and eventually did because Sung-jin was impossible to be dishonest with. "I like studying with you," she said one Tuesday. He looked up from his notes. Behind the wire-framed glasses, his dark eyes were warm and specific. "I know," he said. "You work better with background presence. I noticed the first week." "You noticed that?" she said. "I notice things," he said, as if this were obvious, which she was learning it was. Sung-jin noticed everything. He noticed that she drank her coffee with exactly 1 sugar and kept forgetting to put the sugar container back in the cabinet, and he started leaving it on the counter for her without comment. He noticed she got headaches when she was on screens too long and started appearing at the kitchen table at 90-minute intervals with a glass of water. He noticed she was homesick the first Thursday. She had said nothing. She was not performing homesick. She was managing it internally with the competence she brought to most things. And he had knocked on her door that evening and said, "My mother is making jollof rice. She called your mother for the recipe." Zola had stared at him. "She called my mother?" "Last week," he said. "She wanted it to be accurate." She had gone to the kitchen, and the apartment had smelled like home, in a way that ambushed her, and she had sat at the kitchen table and eaten jollof rice in Seoul, made from her mother's recipe by a Korean woman who had thought to call for it in advance, and she had felt something she was not going to examine, because examining it would have required admitting how much it had helped. She looked at Sung-jin across the table. He was eating the jollof rice with the focused appreciation of someone experiencing it seriously and not performing appreciation. "How is it?" she asked. "Extraordinary," he said. He adjusted his glasses. "I've been reading about West African spice traditions. The Scotch bonnet and the smoked crayfish combination creates a flavor compound that—" "You've been reading about West African spice traditions?" "For context," he said. "I wanted to understand what my mother was making." She looked at him. He was looking at his food. Behind the glasses, his expression was the expression of someone who had done a thing and was not making a production of it. She thought, Sung-jin Kim is going to be a problem. With Min-jun, it happened differently. Less domestic, less organized, more like weather. He was a night person, up late, sometimes through the night, sleeping past noon on days he didn't have class. He played guitar in his room after midnight, not loudly, but present, the sound coming through the wall between their rooms in a way that she did not find disruptive and told herself she should. She would lie awake listening to him work through a melody, starting and stopping, revising in real time, and the sound of the revision, the searching quality of it, the patience of a person who would find the right note eventually because they were not going to stop until they did, was something she found, without choosing to, deeply appealing. She knocked on his door the second Thursday at 12:30 at night because she was not sleeping, and he was clearly not sleeping, and she had decided this was a reasonable thing to do. He opened the door with the guitar still in his hand. "Come in," he said, not surprised. "You don't know why I'm here. You can't sleep," he said. "I can hear you moving around. The walls are thin." He went back to the guitar and sat on the floor. "Sit down. I'm working on something." She sat on the floor. He played. She listened. He was working on a song. She could hear it being assembled in real time, the melody finding itself, the chord changes shifting until something settled, and then he would push past the settling because it wasn't right yet. He did not explain what he was doing. He did not perform the process. He was just in it, and she was beside him while he was in it. And the room at 12:30 was warm and slightly chaotic, and the record player was on low, and his long red hair fell over his shoulder as he bent over the guitar, and she thought about what he had said. Music, composition specifically, writing songs that other people feel something from.
She felt something from this. She did not tell him yet. Play the part from last night, the bridge. He looked up. You heard that? Through the wall. It was the best part. He looked at her for a moment with the direct, dark eyes. Then he played the bridge. She listened. It was, she had not been wrong, the best part. Something in it that opened, that had more room in it than the rest of the song, that was reaching for something it had not quite found yet. There's a note missing before the resolution. There should be a note that holds the tension longer before it releases. He stopped. He looked at her. You play? Piano, since I was 7. I stopped at 15. I still hear it. He tried the note she described. He tried it again, a step up, a step down. Then he found it, the right one, the one that held the tension exactly the right amount of time before releasing it, and something in the bridge became itself. He sat with his hand on the guitar strings and looked at the wall. That's it, he said. I know, she said. He looked at her. How did you know that? I told you, I still hear it. He looked at her for a long moment with the expression she was learning was his version of being genuinely surprised. Not the surface surprise of someone encountering the unexpected, but the deeper kind, the kind that required reassessment. The long red hair, the tattoos catching the low lamplight, the guitar in his lap with the string she had told him about still resonating. Stay, he said. I want to finish the bridge. She stayed. He finished the bridge. She fell asleep on his floor at 2 in the morning with her back against the side of his bed and the record player on low and the sound of him still playing, very quietly, not wanting to wake her. He put a blanket over her and let her sleep. When she woke up at 6, he was asleep on the bed above her, and she lay in the early morning of his chaotic room and looked at the ceiling and thought that she was in a significant amount of trouble and was not yet ready to determine which direction the trouble was running.
Mira Kim saw everything. This was not something she announced or weaponized. She was simply a woman who had raised 2 very different sons by herself for 15 years and had developed, in the course of that, an accurate read of every room she walked into. She watched Zola at the kitchen table with Sung-jin over their respective studying with the particular quality of attention of someone watching a pattern develop. She watched Zola come out of Min-jun's room at 6 in the morning with a blanket crease on her cheek and her textbook in her hand, and said only, "Coffee's made." One Saturday morning, a month in, she and Zola were alone in the kitchen, the boys still asleep, the Seoul morning doing its quiet weekend thing, and Mira said, without looking up from the vegetables she was chopping, "How are you finding it here?" "Better than I expected," Zola said honestly. "And the boys?" She considered, "They're very different." "They've always been very different, since they were 3 years old." Sung-jin decided everything carefully. Min-jun decided everything immediately, and then lived with the consequences. She set the knife down. Both methods have costs. Zola wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Mirasi," she said. She had started using the honorific in the 2nd week because it felt right. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Did you know this was going to happen when my parents asked you to take me in?" Mira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I knew my sons. I knew your mother's daughter. I made some calculations." She picked up the knife again. "I didn't engineer anything, but I wasn't surprised." "That's slightly terrifying," Zola said. Min-jun had used the same word about Sung-jin, and she understood now that in this family, certain things ran in parallel lines. "Probably," she said. "Eat your breakfast. The heart figures itself out on its own schedule. The stomach shouldn't have to wait." The complication arrived 6 weeks in, on a Friday evening, when she made the mistake of telling Kezia about both of them. "Describe them," Kezia had texted. "One is like the person who notices you're out of coffee before you do and makes sure there's always some. The other one is like 2 a.m. and guitars and the note that fixes everything and falling asleep on his floor. Zola. I know. Zola. I know. Which one do you like?" She had put the phone down and picked it up and put it down again and then typed, "Both, which is the problem." "Girl, you are living." She was living. This was accurate and not helpful. Sung-jin told her first. He was not reckless. She had known he wasn't reckless. It was both his strength and his limitation. So when he told her, it was planned, careful, and kind, in exactly the way he was careful and kind about everything. He asked her if she had time to talk. She said yes. He made tea. He sat across from her at the kitchen table where they studied, and he looked at her through the wire-framed glasses with the warm, focused, dark eyes, and he said, I want to be honest with you about something, not to pressure you or create a situation you're uncomfortable with, just because I think you deserve honesty, and I'm not able to continue not being honest. She held her teacup. Okay, she said. I think about you, he said, simply, every day, not in a, I'm not asking you for anything. I know the situation is complicated, and I know you're here for a year, and I know Min-jun, he stopped. He adjusted his glasses. I know my brother, and I know what I feel, and I think you should have the full picture. She looked at him, at the careful person who left coffee on the counter and learned West African spice traditions and noticed every headache. Sung-jin, she said. You don't have to say anything, he said. I just needed to say it. I know, she said, and she stopped. I care about you very much. The way you see things and the way you show up and the way you are with me has been, she pressed her lips together. This year would have been much harder without you. I need you to know that. He looked at his tea. He looked at her. The glasses, the specific expression of someone receiving something that is both more and less than what they were hoping for, and who is handling it with the grace they bring to everything. But, he said. But, she said gently. He nodded, once. Okay, he said. Thank you for being honest. Sung-jin. I'm fine, he said, and he was, or he would be, in the specific way of someone who has prepared themselves for an outcome and finds that preparation, however painful, holds. Can we still study tomorrow? Yes, she said, obviously yes. Good, he said. I found a paper on carbon capture policy you're going to want to argue with. She laughed, despite everything. He smiled, the real one, quiet and warm, and picked up his tea. She thought, Sung-jin Kim is the best person I know, and I am not in love with him, and that is one of the more frustrating facts of my life. Min-jun did not tell her. Min-jun showed her, in the reckless way of someone who had decided and was implementing without prior consultation. It was a Wednesday night, 8 weeks in. She had been in his room listening to him play. They had established this, the late nights, the music, the floor. And he had been working on a new song, something different from the bridge song, something more urgent, and she had been listening, and at some point the playing had stopped. She looked up. He was looking at her. What? She said. Nothing, he said. He set the guitar aside. He looked at her with the direct, dark eyes and the red hair falling over one shoulder, and no management of what was on his face whatsoever. He said, I wrote this one for you, the new one. She was very still. You don't have to, he started. Play it, she said. He played it. She didn't have a word for what it was. It was the note before the resolution held longer. It was the 2 a.m. floor and the blanket, and the 6 in the morning waking up. It was the Korean ballad her father played on Sundays, and the specific quality of a room that had a person in it who was looking for the right note and not stopping until they found it. It was 3 minutes and 40 seconds long, and it was entirely about her, and she knew it, and he knew she knew it, and when it ended, the room was very quiet. Min-jun, she said. He set the guitar down. He looked at her. He did not pretend the song was something else, or soften what it was. He simply waited, which was not his usual mode, and which cost him something she could see it cost him. I know the situation, the year, my mother's apartment, Jean. He said his brother's name with the specific weight of someone who has thought carefully about what they are saying. I'm not trying to make anything complicated. It's already complicated. I know, he said. I wrote you a song anyway. That's who I am. I don't know how to want things at a safe distance. She looked at him, at the red hair and the tattoos and the guitar and the walls with the half-finished mural and the record player and the note that fixed the bridge and the blanket at 2 in the morning and the song he had written entirely for her,
at the 21-year-old who was failing organic chemistry and wanted to write songs that other people felt things from, and who said, "I don't know how to want things at a safe distance," with the complete lack of apology of someone who has examined this about themselves and has decided it is simply true. She crossed the small distance between them.
She kissed him. He went completely still for 1 second, the specific stillness of surprise, genuine, the kind that arrives before the response. And then he kissed her back with the same full commitment he brought to everything, both hands in her hair, the song still resonating from the guitar strings somewhere in the room. When they separated, he rested his forehead against hers. His expression was unguarded and full and entirely unmanaged. Nothing performed, nothing protected. "Zola," he said. "I know," she said. "Do you?" he said. "Yes," she said. "I know what this is. I know it's not careful, and I know it doesn't have a plan, and I know you're going to wake up at noon and fail organic chemistry and play guitar until 3 in the morning." She looked at him. "I know all of that." "And?" he said. "And I wrote 4 pages of notes about your bridge song in my environmental policy notebook," she said, 3 weeks ago. I should have known then." He looked at her. The corner of his mouth moved. Then the smile, the full, real one, the one that arrived suddenly and without announcement. "You took notes on my song?" "I was studying," she said. "You were coming through the wall." "Zola." "Yes?" "I'm going to kiss you again," he said. "I know," she said. He did. She told Sung-jin the next morning, not because he asked, he did not ask, he was not the kind of person who would, but because he deserved to know directly and from her, and because dishonesty in this apartment was simply not possible given the specific perceptiveness of every person living in it. He was at the kitchen table with his coffee and his notes. She sat across from him. He looked at her over the wire-framed glasses, and she could see that he already knew, not the specifics, but the shape of it, the way perceptive people know the shape of things before they know the details. "Min-jun," he said. "Yes," she said. He was quiet for a moment. He looked at his notes. He looked at his coffee. He looked at her. "He wrote you a song," he said. "How did you know?" "He's been working on something for 6 weeks, Sung-jin said. "He plays it at night when he thinks no one hears. I've heard it through the wall." He adjusted his glasses. "It sounds like you. I figured it out." She looked at him. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't apologize," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did he." He was quiet again. "He's reckless," he said, not unkindly. "He always has been. He jumps into things and lives in the consequences, and somehow the consequences never break him." He looked at her. "You're the same way. I've been watching you for 8 weeks. You think you're careful, but you're not. You make decisions with your whole self." She looked at him. "Is that a flaw?" she said. "No," he said. The same word she had gotten from Min-jun, said in the same way, with the same certainty. "It's not a flaw." He picked up his coffee. "He's lucky," he said, quietly, without bitterness, which was the thing that cost him the most to manage, and which he managed anyway, because he was Sung-jin Kim, and this was how he was. "So am I," she said. He nodded. "Study with me tomorrow," he said. "The carbon capture paper." "Obviously," she said. He smiled, the small, warm, real one. "Good." Mira found out over dinner that night, not because anyone told her, because she was Mira Kim and she had raised these boys for 15 years, and she could read the atmosphere of her own apartment the way a sailor reads weather. She looked at Min-jun across the table, quieter than usual, which for Min-jun meant something specific, the quiet of someone containing something rather than performing carelessness. She looked at Sung-jin, who was eating with the focused precision of someone using dinner as a structure to organize themselves around. She looked at Zola, who was looking at her rice. She said nothing for the duration of the meal. After, when Sung-jin had gone to his room and Min-jun was doing the dishes, he had started doing the dishes the week Zola arrived, which Mira had noted and filed. She came to stand at the kitchen doorway. She looked at Min-jun's back, at the long red hair, the tattoos, the particular way he was washing the dishes, which was the careful way rather than the fast way, which told her everything. "Min-jun," she said. "Amma," he said.
still washing. "Be careful with her," she said. He stopped. He turned around. He looked at his mother with the dark eyes and no performance on his face. "I know," he said. "She's here for a year," Mira said. "I know," he said. "And after the year, she goes back to Atlanta and her life and her program and her parents who come back from their sabbatical." "I know," he said. "I know all of that." "And?" He looked at his mother. The red hair, the tattoos, the 21-year-old who had always decided things immediately and lived with the consequences, and somehow the consequences had never broken him. "And I wrote her a song," he said, "and she came across the room. And I'm not—" He stopped. "I'm not going to be the person who doesn't let something be real because it has an end date." Mira looked at her son. She thought about the 15 years, the piano and the guitar, the 4.0 and the failing organic chemistry, the ways she had tried to make them the same, and the ways they had insisted on being different. She thought about the woman in Atlanta who had called her on a Tuesday and asked if she could take her daughter for a year, and she had said yes without hesitation, because she had known the woman for 25 years, and she had trusted the intuition of a mother who knew her child. She looked at Min-jun and thought, "I trust this too." "Finish the dishes," she said. "Yes, Amma." She went to her room, she called her college roommate in Atlanta, and talked for an hour about nothing specific, and when she hung up, she sat in her room and thought that the heart figures itself out on its own schedule, which she had told Zola 8 weeks ago, and which remained true.
The year did what years do. It moved faster in the second half than the first, which is the particular cruelty of good time, and which she had been warned about by people who were right about it. She studied. She wrote her environmental policy paper on urban green infrastructure in Seoul, and it was the best work she had produced in her junior year, because Seoul was a city that gave you things to write about. She studied with Sung-jin at the kitchen table and argued about the carbon capture paper and 3 others after it, and their friendship became the specific kind that is entirely real and slightly complicated and more valuable for the complication. She was with Min-jun in the way of 2 people who have decided to be fully in something, and are. He was reckless and present and occasionally irresponsible and always honest, and she found that the combination, in practice, was what she had always wanted without having articulated it. He finished the song, the whole song, bridge and all, and played it at an open mic night in Hongdae in March, and she sat in the 3rd row and heard people around her go quiet, the way people go quiet when something they weren't prepared to feel reaches them, and she thought about what he had said in his room in September, writing songs that other people feel something from. She thought, he's doing it. He's already doing it. He switched out of organic chemistry in February. He enrolled in a music composition course at a conservatory in Sinchon. Mira had a conversation with him about this that lasted 2 evenings and ended with her calling the conservatory to ask about the program structure, which was not agreement, but was the thing that lived just before it. Sung-jin finished his semester with the 4.0 intact and sent Zola a 12-page paper on environmental policy frameworks in East Asian cities, with a note that said, "You might find the Seoul section relevant. Disagreements, welcome." She sent back 14 pages of disagreements. He sent back a response that took him a week to write. She printed it out and read it at the kitchen table and thought that there was no one on earth she would rather argue with about policy than Sung-jin Kim, which was its own kind of love, and she knew it, and she thought he did too. Her parents came back from their sabbatical in September. The lease on the Atlanta house had ended. They were ready. They called to say they were booking her flight home. She sat in her room on the 8th floor in Mapo, with the Seoul street below the window and the textbooks on the shelf, and thought about Tuesday in September of last year when she had arrived with 2 suitcases and a carry-on full of textbooks and had not expected any of it. Min-jun knocked on her door. "Hey," she said. He came in. He sat on the edge of her bed, which is where he always sat when they were in her room, because her floor did not have the same infrastructure as his floor, and she had not acquired a guitar. He looked at her with the direct, dark eyes, and the long red hair loose around his shoulders, and the tattoos catching the afternoon light through her window. "When do you leave?" he said. 2 weeks, she said. He nodded.
He looked at his hands, at the tattoos on his forearms, the botanical illustrations, the constellations. She had spent a year learning all of them by name. She knew which one he had gotten first and which one he had drawn himself and which one his brother had designed for him at 17 on a piece of graph paper, because Sung-jin designed things on graph paper even then. Min-jun, she said. I know, he said. He looked up. I'm not going to... He stopped. I don't do safe distances, you know that, which means I'm also not going to pretend this doesn't... He stopped again. I know, she said. The song, he said. The one from the open mic? I recorded it. A studio in Hongdae let me use their booth. It's being submitted to a label next week. He said this the way he said things he was proud of, but was not going to perform pride about. I wanted you to know before you left, since you found the note in the bridge. She looked at him. Min-jun, yes. Atlanta is not another planet, she said. He looked at her. No, he said. And you have a phone, she said. I do, he said. And a passport? You have a passport. I got one in March. When you told me about the open mic circuit in the southeastern U.S., I looked it up. She stared at him. You got a passport in March? I said I don't do safe distances, he said.
The corner of his mouth moved, then the smile, the full, sudden one. I meant it literally. She crossed the room and sat beside him on the edge of the bed, and he put his arm around her, and she leaned into the red hair and the tattoos and the specific warmth of a person who had given her a year's worth of late nights and wrong notes found right and songs written about her and a passport obtained in March against an eventuality he had decided to plan for. The conservatory, she said. Spring semester, he said. Oma called. Apparently she has questions about the faculty. Your mother is terrifying, she said. She is, he said. She's also usually right. She looked at the room, the textbooks, the Seoul street through the window. 2 weeks left of the year she had not expected and had somehow needed completely. Play me the recording, the studio version. He got his phone. He played it. She listened to the note in the bridge, the right one, the one she had found, the one that held the tension exactly long enough before releasing it, and thought about every version of the year this had been, and was glad, wholly and without qualification, that it had been this one. She left on a Saturday. Mira hugged her for a long time at the door. She pressed an envelope into Zola's hands that she said contained a recipe. Zola did not open it until she was on the plane and found that it was the jello rice recipe, her mother's recipe, transcribed in Mira's handwriting, annotated with notes about the substitutions she had made for Korean ingredients and the ones that she had refused to substitute because some things needed to be exact. Sung-jin walked her to the elevator. He had his notes under one arm because he was Sung-jin Kim and he had been on his way to study. He looked at her through the wire-framed glasses and he said, The disagreements about the carbon capture paper, I want to continue them. So do I, she said. Good. I'll email you the new framework next week. It's more wrong than the last one. You'll enjoy it. She laughed. She hugged him. He hugged her back with the specific contained warmth of someone who loved something and had chosen not to cost anyone with it. Sung-jin? Zola. His voice was steady. Thank you for all of it. The coffee and the notes and the jello rice research and all of it. The marginal effort was zero. She pulled back to look at him. He was smiling, the small, real one. His eyes behind the glasses were bright. Sure, she said. She got in the elevator. Min-jun was downstairs. He had not walked her to the elevator. He had gone down first, which she understood was because he was Min-jun, and he did things on his own timeline, and also because he needed a moment, and this was how he took them. He was standing outside the building with his hands in his pockets and his long red hair loose, and a guitar case on his back, because he had a conservatory audition in 3 hours, and he was going directly from here, which he had not mentioned until this morning. You have an audition in 3 hours, she said. Yes, he said. You should have... I wanted to see you off, he said, simply. The audition can wait 10 minutes. She looked at him. It can't wait 10 minutes. Auditions don't work like that. Mine does, he said. I called ahead. She stared at him. "You called the conservatory to push your audition time?" "By 15 minutes," he said. They were very understanding. "Min-jun." "Yes, you are completely impossible," she said. "I know," he said. The smile, the full, sudden one. "You like it." She looked at him on the Mapo sidewalk with the guitar case and the red hair and the tattoos and the passport he had gotten in March and the audition he had pushed 15 minutes. She thought about every late night and the bridge note and the song recorded in a Hongdae studio and the label submission and the fact that none of it had been careful and all of it had been real. "Call me," she said, "after the audition." "Immediately after," he said. "And if you get in," she said. "I'll get in," he said. "Min-jun." "I'll get in," he said, with the specific certainty of someone who has done the work and knows it. "And then I'll call you, and then we'll figure out the rest." "The rest is a lot," she said. "I know," he said. "I have a passport." She looked at him for one more moment, the Seoul morning, the guitar case, the red hair, the year that had been this and not anything she had planned and had been better for it. She kissed him, brief and certain and full, and got into the waiting car. She watched him through the rear window as the car pulled away. He stood on the Mapo sidewalk with his hands in his pockets, watching her go. He did not look away until the car turned the corner. She faced forward. She thought about Atlanta and her parents and the house that had been leased to strangers and was now hers again. She thought about the year, about the kitchen table and the coffee always made and the 2 a.m. floor and the note in the bridge and the song about her recorded in a studio in Hongdae. She took out her phone. She put in her headphones. She played the recording. The bridge came on. The note before the resolution, held just long enough, and then the release. It still sounded like arriving somewhere. She closed her eyes and let it play all the way to the end. 3 hours and 40 minutes later, at 30,000 feet over the Pacific, her phone lit up. "I got in." She looked at the message. She looked at the clouds outside the window. She thought about the passport obtained in March and the audition pushed 15 minutes. She typed back, "I knew you would." His reply came in under a minute. "The note in the bridge was yours. You should know that." She looked out at the clouds. She thought, yes, and so was the year. And so, she understood now, was whatever came after it. She typed, "Call me when you land." "You're on a plane." "I meant when I land." "I know," he wrote back. "I was going to anyway." She put the phone in her pocket. She looked at the clouds, the Pacific below them, Atlanta on the other side of it. She thought about Mira's recipe in the envelope, about Sung-jin's carbon capture framework waiting in her email, about the conservatory in Sinchon, and the label in Seoul, and the southeastern U.S. open mic circuit that Min-jun had looked up in March. She thought, some years are the kind that change the shape of everything that comes after them. This had been one of those years. She put her headphones back in. She played the song from the beginning. It started with the melody, the part he had been working on the first night she had knocked on his door and stood in the doorway and heard the song she had recognized, the song her father played on Sundays, this song that had made a 21-year-old with red hair and constellation tattoos say, "Come in, I'll play it again." She thought that was where it started. She closed her eyes. Outside the window, the Pacific held its enormous blue silence. The song played, the bridge came, the note held. Then the resolution, warm and certain, arriving exactly when it was supposed to. The end. If you enjoyed the story, leave a comment telling me the moment that got you and where you are watching from. We love to hear from you. Subscribe so you're there when the next story drops, and share this with someone who likes a spicy, budding romance as well as passionate love.